Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Forget about Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. Did you know that the United States is engaged in a fourth war in the Arab world? Drone airstrikes have intensified in recent weeks above the nation of Yemen. These attacks have targeted members of al-Qaeda and radical militants who've joined the struggle to topple the Yemeni government. Currently, Yemen is in the midst of a revolution as that nation's president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, fled the nation with serious injuries and is now being treated in Saudi Arabia after his presidential palace was bombed. Whether or not Yemen will join the Arab Spring nations of Egypt and Tunisia with pro-democratic revolution, or if radical militants will take power, is still unclear. But one thing is for sure, covert U.S. airstrikes in that nation won't help our cause. American workers are screwed. If you want workers' rights, move to South Africa. Wall Street just inked a new deal to open up stores across South Africa, but in order to get the deal done, Walmart had to make some concessions, including honoring union contractors among workers. And it's not only South Africa. Walmart lets workers unionize all over the world, in Brazil, Argentina, China, the United Kingdom, everywhere except here in the United States. In America, Walmart is considered one of the fiercest opponents of unionization, spending millions of dollars to defeat pro-union legislation in Congress and resorting to underhanded tactics to kill off any organizing attempts among its American workforce. Since America embraced so-called free trade, American workers have seen their wages and rights collapse. In the best of the rest of the news, the next stop, the Supreme Court. Yesterday, the 11th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in Atlanta heard arguments regarding Obamacare in what is likely the last stop before the U.S. Supreme Court steps in to issue a final ruling on the constitutionality of President Obama's health reform law. The 11th Circuit Court is hearing an appeal brought by the White House after a Florida judge earlier this year declared the entire law unconstitutional, ruling that the government cannot force people to buy health insurance. But since healthcare is a business that operates across state lines, the White House legal team says the federal government is well within its right to regulate it based on the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Constitution. Basically, the argument that conservatives are putting forward is the same argument that they used to fight against civil rights laws in the 1960s, arguing that the government can't tell business what to do, just like the government can't tell individuals what to do, whether it's ending racial discrimination or buying health insurance. Whichever side prevails, the Supreme Court will hear the next appeal and deliver a final verdict. Unfortunately, with the current makeup of right-wingers on the high court, this could be an uphill battle for the president. The Republican battle for a presidential nomination is quickly turning into a race to the bottom, and I think Tim Pawlenty just won with his new tax scheme. Pawlenty just unveiled a new plan that puts the Bush tax cuts on steroids. Under the new plan, which will add nearly $8 trillion to the debt over the next 10 years, people making over $1 million will get a 41% tax cut, and people making over $10 million will get a 46% tax cut. On top of that, Pawlenty is completely getting rid of the capital gains tax and the estate tax, taxes that are paid almost exclusively by rich people sitting on their butts around the pool waiting for the dividend checks to arrive. And how does Pawlenty plan to get back these tax losses? By shifting the tax burden to the working class. That's the Republican way, after all, isn't it? These tax cuts, combined with his Google test proposal that requires the federal government to stop offering services that are offered by private companies on Google, will fundamentally remake our nation, turning us into the libertarian paradise of Somalia. So if change and abject poverty are what you're looking for, vote Pawlenty. The FCC just released a report today saying that local news agencies are not doing their job in holding local governments and schools accountable. Despite the uptick in online news, the report concludes that there is a lack of local representation and investigation, and that this is causing an array of problems, including scandals not exposed, government waste not discovered, health dangers not identified in time, and local elections involving candidates about whom we know little. The FCC is recommending local media outlets create C-SPAN-like broadcasts to inform their communities. Curiously, in the same week this report was released, the FCC gave in to Republicans in the House and also pledged to completely take the Fairness Doctrine off its books. Fairness Doctrine required media outlets that called themselves news to devote a sliver of every hour to actually covering straight news. Reagan stopped enforcing the Fairness Doctrine in 1987, which is why we now have infotainment instead of news. So if the FCC is really looking for someone to blame for lack of real news in America, maybe they should look in the mirror. In our How Are Lawmakers Turning Their Back on Thomas Jefferson news, The State House in Louisiana just passed a bill that calls for the construction of a 6-foot-tall monument of the Ten Commandments to be placed on the grounds of the state capitol. Democrat Patrick Williams announced the bill, calling it Context for Acknowledging America's History. Of course, other people see the monument as nothing more than a wrecking ball to the wall separating church and state in America. The legislation will now head to the Senate, and then Governor Jindal, who has already said he plans on signing it. While the monument will be built using private donations, it's likely the taxpayers will end up footing the bill for this religious symbol, as the new law will almost certainly be challenged in the courts. I guess dealing with a stagnant economy and a devastated coastline in Louisiana are secondary priorities for state lawmakers, making Thomas Jefferson's role in his grave is the number one priority. And that's the way it is today, Thursday, June 9th, 2011. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.